Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the 2014 action anthology film Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. And as an anthology film, the movie doesn't have a single narrative. Instead, it features four shorter tales, which are split into five separate parts, all of which share the same setting, Sin City itself, of course. And they also share a number of characters. In the first segment, the preternaturally tough bruiser Marv wakes up to find himself surrounded by bodies with no memory of how he got there. Marv's quest to work out what happened leads, inevitably, to another slew of violence. In the second and fourth segments, meanwhile, we follow the story of a cocky young gambler named Johnny who comes to Sin City and immediately makes an enemy of local crime boss and senator Ethan Rourke. The third and longest segment comes in the middle, and here we meet Private Detective Dwight McCarthy. Dwight is attempting to put his violent past behind him with only limited success when he is contacted by his former lover, Ava Lord. Ava is the titular Dame to Kill For, and killing is exactly what she wants Dwight to do. She tells Dwight that her wealthy husband Damien abuses her, and she fears for her life if Dwight doesn't put an end to him. The fifth and final segment centres on Nancy, a stripper with a long and bitter grudge against the wicked Senator Rourke. She recruits Marv to help her finally wreak her vengeance. So I was a big fan of Frank Miller's Sin City graphic novels back during the early 90s. They had gorgeous art and lashings of testosterone, and I was still a callow enough young man to overlook their ever-increasing sexism and recycling of storylines. I also thoroughly enjoyed the first Sin City film when it was released in 2005. Sure, the actual comics had by then become an over the top caricature of themselves and sufficiently formulaic that there was a recognisable Sin City story in which a violent but honourable man acts to protect a woman, finds that the forces that threaten her are much more than he first imagined, and ends up having to kill a whole lot of people. But golly, despite all that, the film looked great and featured some excellent performances. I was thus very pleased when A Dame to Kill For was announced soon after the first film debuted. It would feature the one story which had changed up the Sin City story formula, and I was sure it would be very, very pretty. The fact that the sequel ultimately took almost a decade to be released was the first warning sign about the film. Frank Miller's hypnotically awful big screen adaptation of The Spirit was the second. But to be honest, while The Spirit was a deeply stupid film, not to mention frequently insane and incoherent, at least it never felt phoned in. It was terrible, but it was wholeheartedly committed to its terribleness. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For commits the, to my mind, far graver sin of not seeming to care. The action sequences are static and lifeless, the sexuality gauche and awkward. This movie has none of the kinetic energy of the original film. It is, quite frankly, a bit boring. And I'm certainly not the first person to notice this. The Raps reviewer described the film as an occasion for dullness and really tedious, with the Seattle Times calling it flabby and self satisfied. Even a comparatively positive review in The Hollywood Reporter could only damn with faint praise, noting, it's diverting enough, but these mean streets are so well travelled that it takes someone like Eva Green to make the detour through them worth the trip. And, to be fair to Miss Green, her performance as Ava Lord is one of the few exceptions to the film's general air of malaise. The other is Powers Booth, who is obviously having a whale of a time, being the evil McEvil Senator Rourke. But in both cases, these are strong performances that can only partly offset fundamental weaknesses of the film's script. And the first of these weaknesses are the two arcs which were written expressly for the film. I've already noted that Miller's original Sin City comics had well and truly descended into flanderized and formulaic rehashes by the end. And in fact, by the time he was working on this script, Miller had moved on to writing All Star Batman, a hugely anticipated series which became notorious for its incoherent depiction of its title character. Miller's writing on the comic was panned by critics and fans alike, with the long running and respected Comic Shop News magazine identifying it as one of the biggest train wrecks in comics history. Not exactly auspicious stuff, and unfortunately, it's a good indication of the quality of writing in the two new stories. While they do both avoid the Sin City formula I mentioned above, neither is a satisfying narrative in its own right. The tale of Johnny the Gambler exists purely to establish character Senator Rourke as a very bad man and relies on massive contrivance to reach its rickety finale. But the finale of the other segment about Nancy is even worse. I laughed out loud at the film, not with it, when it happened. And since that's also the final act of the whole film, it means that they ended the movie chuckling derisively at the whole thing, which was presumably not the intended result. Problems with the writing don't end there, though. They also fundamentally undermine the titular arc, and thus the central core of the film. For some reason, while keeping most of the action within the plot the same as in the original comic, the filmmakers chose to rewrite the dialogue and motivations for them. These invariably make the villainous characters' decisions less coherent, less calculated, more reactive and desperate. In other words, it makes the villains weaker, which is a baffling thing to do since any hero is only as impressive as the villains they overcome. Beating a chump doesn't mean a whole lot. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For was a commercial and critical failure, and in my opinion, it thoroughly deserved that fate. It is a disappointing and surprisingly tedious and tepid movie from end to end, with talented actors squandered in second-rate storylines. Next time, the Australian dark comedy series Totally Completely Fine from 2023. I'm sure everything in this show will be sunshine and roses and rainbows and puppies, and the title's not ironic at all, right? But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've seen Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, let me know what you thought of it.